for those waiting for more than words out of the White House in response to the various abuses of power by police departments around the country in the past, the entirety of that we've been in the United States, especially in regard to the African American community, you might be getting your wish. Very soon, President Obama will sign an executive order that will establish a task force to look into those abuses of power and to deliver to Obama by March 2nd a set of recommendations, concrete recommendations on what can be done to reform police departments and get them to, I guess, bridge the gap, I suppose, with the communities that they are intended to serve. The panel will be co-chaired by Philadelphia Police Chief Charles Ramsey and former Assistant Attorney General Lori Robinson. Ron Davis, director of the Justice Department's Community-Oriented Policing Services Office, will serve as the group's executive director. And understand that this task force will be going on concurrently with an internal review by the White House of police department operations and training and things like that. Davis, who'd previously been referenced, Ron Davis, said that the review would likely encompass an examination of how police departments recruit officers, how they could diversify, their use of force procedures, and concerns about implicit bias in policing. The panel will also review best practices for the use of body cameras, a central component in the president's response to the policing controversies. So by March 2nd, we'll have a set of concrete recommendations, although bear in mind that we also had that in regard to abuses of power by the NSA, and we all know how that turned out.
Now, well, there's a big difference there. President Obama is perfectly fine with the so-called abuses at the NSA. He's the one who authorized it, along with President Bush. In this case, I think he actually does care that the local cops clean it up. He didn't authorize them to do any of that. And I think I want to give him a little bit of credit here, because earlier we had said, hey, we wish he'd take more concrete action in addressing this issue. This is obviously still a systemic problem across the country. Now, as always, we would have done it differently here. I would have hoped that the president would be more aggressive and hold a press conference where he doesn't just, in an interview as he did, talk about, oh, somebody once confused me for a waiter, right? But have a real conversation about race and the huge racial issues that most African-American men and oftentimes women deal with in a press conference where he brings people from different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, but who are African-American, and explain their experiences. Nonetheless, at least he's doing this, and it is a beginning, and it's certainly something you would not have gotten under a Republican president. So chalk one up for, well, elections do matter. It's not, we wish they mattered more. We wish that he was far more progressive, but it's a step in the right direction. I hope that it doesn't just peter out, that they actually have recommendations and we actually do something about it.
See, here's why I don't think you need to be worried about that. That is very often our fear, is that, they say they're going to have a commission and then it's 6 months or a year after the incident. But I feel confident that in America there will be abuses of power, there will be beatings, and there will be killings by the police. There will be video camera footage, cell phone footage showing it around the time that they finally come out with their report. I feel pretty confident about that.
Of course, but because it doesn't take much for that to happen. But, police are a lot better than they were 30 years ago. This is not going to be a big speech praising the police, but I mean, it was worse, and it has gotten better, and it can get better. But yeah, it'll take a long time. But I mean, this whole, it's as we've talked about when Jimmy Dore's here often, it requires an entire change in the manner of thinking, and that doesn't come from a panel's recommendation. That probably comes from an entirely new generation of police officers hired and trained.
Yeah, but if the recommendations change how you train and hire those, then that could lead
then that could make a difference. But you're not going to see dramatic changes for 10, 15 years.
Right. But this is a part of the process.
That's right. Yeah.
This is how we lead to change.
That's right.
So cops have gotten better in the last 30 years because we're seeing them more, and they're having to react to that. In the past, they'd kick the living crap out of people and shoot people, and there was no cameras, and nobody would find out. Nobody would be to the wiser, right? That being said, they're also worse in some regards, because in the past, they used to at least say freeze and things like that, and they would take a moment before they killed you.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a cultural shift in the wrong direction, where a cop is never, ever, ever supposed to risk his life or his well-being under any circumstance, and he should shoot immediately before any risk happens. One other thing that should be noted here, they just did a Gallup poll, and it turns out now 13% of Americans believe that racial issues are the #1 issue in the country. That's
pretty high.
the largest number since the '91 riots, with the whole Rodney King and the LA riots, et cetera. So my point in bringing that out is that sometimes you need to shine a light on these things to grab people's attention and for them to go, oh yeah, there is something wrong here, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's more non-whites than whites. Non-whites say, 22% of non-whites say it's the most important issue. 9% of whites say, but still, that's a big number. It seems like a small number, but it's a big number because that's the number of people saying it's the #1 issue in the country, right?
Yeah.
And it has gone up dramatically in the last couple of months. So when you have the country paying attention and saying this is important, and you have the president putting together a commission, well, that's how you begin to discuss if they have the right culture, the wrong culture, and how we can address it. So it's a step in the right direction.